Había estado esperando que llegase este día desde que Leandro me invitó a participar en esta celebración. Realmente es un honor estar aquí con ustedes, porque la Sociedad de Estadística e Investigación Operativa ha promovido activamente nuestra profesión durante este último año. En nombre de su sociedad hermana, the American Statistical Association, les felicito por todos sus logros destacados, no solo durante el Año Internacional de Estadística, pero también durante los últimos 51 años. Les deseo todo el éxito en los próximos años. Aunque sé un poco de español, no es suficiente para todo lo que quiero decir esta mañana. Así que después de haber comenzado en la lengua de Cervantes, ahora continuaré en la lengua de Shakespeare. You're looking at a picture that I have seen every day during the past year on the campus of SAS Institute in Cary, North Carolina, where I work. We have celebrated the International Year with these banners which have been up on the streets of our campus. Now the banners have started to come down because after all we're at the end of the year. It's time to look ahead. But this picture is a very good metaphor for what I want to discuss with you this morning. The road ahead is what I want to think about with you. And the questions that I want to discuss with you this morning from my perspective as past president of the American Statistical Association and as someone who works in the world of business and industry is the question, where is the statistics profession headed? If you're a student in our audience this morning, or if you teach students, our very related question is, where can a statistical career take you? And so I want to think about where we're headed as a journey. Now, every journey really is something that we can think about in three ways. First of all, there's the anticipation. And I want to spend some time talking with you about the trends that are shaping our future. What is it that we can look forward to, and what is it that is really taking us in new directions in our profession? A second phase of any journey is the preparation. What do we pack? What do we take along? What do we prepare for on the journey? And I want to spend some time thinking with you about how we train and prepare our students for success in the field of statistics in a world that is changing rapidly. In particular, I want to talk about development of statistical leadership, because I sincerely believe that leadership is one of the most underdeveloped and one of the most important resources that we need for our journey. And third, of course, for any journey, there is the destination. And I believe that if we prepare and if we anticipate correctly, that what we can arrive at is a destination where our profession has unprecedented new levels of visibility in a world, in a society that is overwhelmed with data. And I believe that we will see new roles, new significant roles for statisticians as our destination. So I want to begin with the first phase, which is the anticipation for our journey. And I want to give you 5 trends that I have observed, not only within the American Statistical Association, but in conversations that I have had with colleagues in universities, in government, in business, in the United States, and also in other countries as well. The first of the 5 trends that I want to give you is the growth of an area that we call business analytics. Now, I realize that this is an area that may not be familiar for you, and so I would like to give you a definition. Business analytics is really the combined use of statistics, data mining, forecasting, and optimization to make critical business decisions and to add value to any organization. And when I say business, I would like you to think more broadly, not just business in the sense of banks or retail organizations, but also government institutions as well. Now, my favorite example of business analytics is a company in Scandinavia called Øresundsbron. This company has a product that is about as boring as it gets. They operate a bridge that links the countries of Denmark and Sweden. And perhaps some of you may have traveled across this bridge. They cannot really raise the tolls for the bridge, and so the only way in which they can increase their revenue and pay off their construction loan is to encourage more people to travel across the bridge. And how do they do this? Well, they have learned that they can combine survey data and demographic data to build statistical models for the preferred activities of their customers. They use these models to provide customers with weekly personalized email messages that offer special rates for activities that are taking place on the other side of the bridge. So if you live in Denmark and you like gourmet food, you get discounts on restaurants in Sweden. These customized emails have had a very high click rate of 30%, and most importantly, they are increasing the frequency of travel. In fact, business analytics is prevalent in every sector. In the pharmaceutical industry, it is now being used to reduce the number of adverse events associated with new drugs. In banks, business analytics is being used to understand and build customer lifetime value. In the hospitality industry, people are using business analytics techniques to improve their customer relationships. And these problems are increasingly characterized by massive amounts of data on customers, patients, transactions, new sources of data, and the need for rapid decision-making and high-performance computing. Most importantly for us, for our profession, business analytics is driving the demand for statistical skills, and many organizations are in fact hiring statisticians or hiring those with statistical skills and increasing their level of analytical talent. In fact, a recent survey indicates that roughly half of the firms that were surveyed, and this is across the world, plan to increase their talent in the next few years. Now, in fact, most of us in the statistics profession don't know a lot about business analytics, and we are, in fact, what I call doubly disconnected. And what I mean by that is that the world of business analytics views statistics as a tool, but not as a profession. And in fact, others are coming in and using these statistical tools, and statistics as a field has relatively little visibility. On the other hand, our profession has been overlooking business analytics as a major opportunity for our statistical students and for statistical practice in general. And so we need to begin to learn the goals and the language of business, and we need to prepare our students for new types of problems that they will encounter if they pursue careers in these areas. Now, related to this is a second trend that I want to give you, and that's this phenomenon of big data. I like to refer to big data as relentless, relatable, and renowned. By relentless, what I mean is that big data is continuously generated by transactions, primarily transactions among people, online, transactions between people and systems, and also by sensor-enabled equipment. The power of big data, and the reason why it is so valuable in so many ways, is really that it can be related, it can be linked, it can be integrated to provide very, very detailed information about patients, about customers, about people in general. And because of this, it can be used to create new business models and new business opportunities. Big data is also renowned. It's very popular in the press, and really hardly a week goes by that I don't see an article about big data in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or somewhere else in the media. And there's a perception, both in the media and at very high levels of government, that big data is now the answer to big questions. But most important for us, big data is creating a shortage of statistical problem solvers. A study conducted by McKinsey Global Institute concluded that by 2018, the United States alone will face a shortage of somewhere between 140,000 and 190,000 people with expertise in statistical methods and data analysis. Now consider the fact that in our country, that is to say in my country, only 4,000 people receive degrees in statistics each year, 500 at the doctoral level, and that number has been flat or constant over time. 2,400 master's degrees were awarded last year, and that number is starting to increase rapidly. And the number of bachelor's degrees is increasing even more rapidly. That's at 1,100, despite the fact that we have traditionally thought of statistics as a graduate subject in the United States. But there's a big difference, a big gap between 160,000 people and 4,000 people. So the question we have to think about is, where will the difference be made up? How will the demand be addressed? And the answer is that others are learning how to analyze data and how to learn from data, and we are no longer the only ones that can claim that particular responsibility. And so that brings me to trend number 3, which is something that I have seen not just in the United States, but also in other parts of the world, including Asia, where I spent 3 weeks this summer. And that is, we're now seeing the emergence of a new group of people who call themselves data scientists. Now, data scientists are not people who have a degree in statistics necessarily, although they might be. They are people who label themselves as data scientists, and there's an increasing demand for those kinds of people, again, across a wide variety of industries. What you see here is a job description, a typical job description for somebody who is looking to hire a data scientist. The person must be an innovative problem solver who learns from data. They must have expertise in statistical modeling and machine learning. They must possess a good understanding of the problem domain. They must be effective communicators of what they learn. And also they must have very specialized programming skills. I have highlighted in red the 2 areas that we tend not to train our students in statistics programs, and that is machine learning and the specialized or advanced programming skills. But otherwise, this reads very much like a description for a very well-qualified applied statistician. So the question is, how many statisticians are really trained in all of these areas and who could qualify for a job as a data scientist? And this is a question that I often get from the students that I have met and during the past few years. Now, another question we might ask is, are data scientists really qualified across all of these areas? And so I started to look more deeply into this question during the past year, and this is something that we have been thinking about at the highest levels of leadership within the American Statistical Association. It turns out that, in fact, data scientists really are not strong in all of these areas. A recent survey categorized data scientists across 4 different areas of activity, and these are people who are focused on different aspects of working with data in an organization. Understanding the business aspects, creating new business models, ranging all the way to understanding complex processes. And so there are different kinds of data scientists, just as there are many different kinds of statisticians. What we learn is that data scientists are, in fact, very deep in one of these categories, and they have some ability in the other categories. And a good way to describe those kinds of people who are deep in one area but are good in a few others, is as T-shaped. The letter T, the column represents the depth, and the crossbar on the T represents the breadth that people should have. And so that's a very good way to describe these data scientists. What is true, however, is that across all of these different categories for data scientists, statistics is considered to be important, and it's something that they need to know. We also need to think about what sets ourselves apart as a profession from data scientists. And the reason we need to think about this is because increasingly data scientists are getting a lot of attention in the press. And in the United States, the Obama administration has announced a major investment in university programs and new types of training that is being funded through the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health. And so there's considerable resources that are being now put into creation of data science programs in universities. So we need to maintain our identity. We need to be able to explain to others what it is that sets us apart from people like data scientists who claim to be able to learn from data. Well, here are three things that I think make us different and really make us unique and set us apart. First of all, we find features in data, just like the data scientists or just like the computer scientists. But we also guard against false discovery, and we think very hard about bias and confounding and how to deal with those kinds of problems in data. Like other people who can run statistical software and build models, we can create models that predict, explain, forecast, but we also qualify their use by thinking about the assumptions behind those models and by accompanying the models with measures of uncertainty. Like other people, we can work with available data, but one of the major strengths of our profession is that we know how to design experiments and surveys and specialized studies that produce data with the right information content. Because without the right information content, big data by itself is not guaranteed to answer the big questions. And perhaps most important of all, we contribute as a profession. We contribute with theory, with research, with continuing education, with programs such as accreditation, with ethical standards, and providing each other with a sense of community. Trend number 4 that is, I think, shaping the future of our field, of our profession, is the increase in the amount of data to the point that it now must be stored on distributed computers. In many cases now, the amount of data that a government agency might have, or that a major business, a bank, might have, is so voluminous that it cannot be stored in a standard or conventional database system on a single server. And so companies increasingly are turning to the use of distributed systems of computers for their computing and for their data storage. And the main problem for statistical analysis is that moving the data out of these systems into a conventional computing environment is very time-consuming. Data movement is always very, very slow. It's the bottleneck for computation. And so increasingly in the future, we will have to think about how we locate the computations with the data on these distributed platforms. And so we need to really start to think about how we prepare for distributed computing. One of the advantages of working with distributed computing is efficiency, because the computation occurs in the same location, in the same nodes where the data are located. The results can be, many of the results can be computed faster, and in addition, the hardware for these types of systems is becoming increasingly affordable. So even though many statisticians today are not working with distributed computing systems, because the price of this type of hardware is falling rapidly, it's very likely that many of us will start to see this type of hardware and this type of data in our local data centers in the future. And so that means that we will have to start to think differently about statistics if we want to deal with data in a distributed environment. We'll have to be able to scale our computations. We have to think about where the data are located and what proportion of the statistical computation can be done in parallel. We have to scale our programming techniques. We have to be able to apply new types of techniques to write programs with distributed data. And that means we will start to learn or need to learn new programming skills. And we really can't do this on our own. We need to be able to partner with departments of computer science and exchange ideas with them and learn from them in order to acquire these skills in the future. We will also need to scale our thinking. We have to be able to understand the mechanisms that generate big data, just as we have always strived to understand the mechanisms that generate the data that we work with today. We have to think about whether the data are suitable for answering the questions, and that is one of our strengths. We have to think about the types of models that might be useful, and those might be different than the ones that we are currently using. And we have to think about how we visualize the data themselves and how we visualize the results. The fifth of these trends is the prevalence of unstructured data. And by unstructured data, I mean data that comes in the form of text or perhaps even images. What we're told is that 70% of the data that is out there in enterprises, in business, and government is in fact today is unstructured. A lot of it is generated by email or it's in the form of documents. And so we need to start to think about text analytics, which is simply statistical learning applied to a collection of documents. And this is another opportunity for us to work and learn from the community of people in computer science who have pioneered this area of text analytics. Examples of areas where this type of data is prevalent, where it's important, are understanding adverse events from patient notes in the field of healthcare, identification of fraudulent insurance claims in the insurance industry, and in many companies that have call centers looking at early warnings or new trends based again on notes or conversations that are taking place in call centers. So those are the 5 trends that I think we need to anticipate. You may not be seeing them today, maybe not next week or even next month, but I think that these are trends that will, in the long run, be shaping the way in which we think about our profession, and they will be trends that create new opportunities. So how do we begin to think about preparing for this journey now that we know something about what to expect along the way? I would like to give you some of the thoughts that we have had in the American Statistical Association, and these are thoughts that are coming from leaders in universities as well as people in members that we have in the areas of business and government. Because ultimately it's by working together that we can prepare best for the journey. Now, traditionally we have prepared our students to be very, very deep in statistical theory and applications. And because of this depth that we have, we could consider the students we're currently training today to be I-shaped. Again, that vertical bar represents the depth that they have in a narrow sense. But I believe that in the future, statisticians will need to be T-shaped, much more like these people in this area of data science. We will continue to need those core skills, the core knowledge that we have in theory and in methodology. But in addition, we will need to be better at computing and better at communication. And I also believe that many statisticians, although not all of them, will need to be what I call pie-shaped. What I mean by pie-shaped is they will need to be deep in statistics and deep in computing, as well as competent in presenting the results of their work. I don't think every statistician will need to be pie-shaped, but I do think there will be opportunities for people who can become more adept in the areas of computing. And again, I see this as an opportunity for partnering and working closely with departments of computer science. So here are 5 recommendations for people in universities, and again, these are based on my experience and the experience of others in the United States and other countries, and they reflect to a large extent our culture in the United States, and some of these might be applicable here in Spain. But we feel we need to equip more students to solve problems with these new types of data Working with textual data, for instance, opens up a whole new world of opportunity for them and for us. We're starting to see university departments update their curricula based on the needs of industry and government and introducing new skills to better prepare them. We're starting to see more emphasis on undergraduate degree programs. And we see the need to train more secondary level or high school level teachers in statistics, because by equipping not just our future statisticians, but people in other areas with good basic statistical skills in statistical thinking and basic analysis, we can influence the way in which decisions are made in many, many different areas. And we are also within the ASA emphasizing career success skills. And in particular, we are putting more emphasis in providing training for our members in areas like communication and leadership. Recently, we put together a set of recommendations for universities who have master's degree programs in statistics. We have introduced training at our meetings for people who, and this includes not only students, but young people in the field and others who are interested in being able to give more effective presentations. And we have started a new conference beginning in 2012, which emphasizes this statistical practice and the practical skills that people need to have in order to flourish in government and business and industry. We have some new initiatives underway. Some of them are in the area of big data. We're working on programs to train more high school statistics teachers. And we have a group of people in the ASA who are working on the development of training in statistical leadership. I want to say more about statistical leadership because, again, I think that this is a very underdeveloped, critical resource for all of us. I say that statistical leadership is our most critical need because we badly need leaders who can help their colleagues and students to succeed by influencing people in their organizations. And we also need leaders who can increase the visibility of our field by influencing the way in which the media, in which government and university administrators perceive the field of statistics. So, again, I think that investing in statistical leadership is one of the most important things that we can do. Many of us have grown up, and I'm one of them, thinking of statistical leaders as the people who are heads of our statistical departments in universities, or thinking of statistical leaders as elected officers of our associations. I never thought of myself as a leader until some years ago when I started to pick up more responsibility within the ASA. But certainly as a graduate student and as a young statistician, I never thought of myself as a leader. But the reality is that we need leaders at all levels of our profession. And I've collected some quotations from people that I have admired and looked up to as leaders within my association, and I would like to share those quotes with you because I think they provide a lot of insights into statistical leadership. Ronald Iman, who served as ASA president some years back, argues that we do need leaders at multiple levels in all of our organizations, and we really should think about leadership in a very broad sense. Sally Morton, who was president in 2009, says that leaders are really ultimately the voice of statistics wherever they are in their organizations. And perhaps you are already doing that, and you might be a leader and not even think of yourself as a leader if you're already the voice of statistics or you're playing an active role at your level. We need leaders with skills. Stu Hunter, who many of you perhaps have met, or you may have heard him speak, you know that he is a wonderful example of somebody who is an extraordinary communicator and is a model for us in how to show other people that statistics is fun, interesting, and important. And we certainly need more people who can do that. Dick Schaefer, another past president of the ASA, points out that leaders need to have good organizational and planning skills. And certainly that's evident here today in planning this meeting. Your leaders had to have considerable skills to organize this meeting. John Kettering, who is another one of our past presidents, points out that leaders need to have a broad perspective. They need to understand how statistics interfaces and intersects with other fields, with other areas, because ultimately this is the way in which our profession impacts society. Now, how do you develop statistical leaders? It's certainly possible to train people with the skills that they need, and in some fields, such as public health, people receive formal training in graduate school. But of course, in a statistics program, there are really not many extra things that we can teach. And so the question becomes, where can people learn how to become statistical leaders? I happen to think that leadership ability is something that is caught rather than taught. And what I mean by that is I think we often learn about leadership by working closely with people who are outstanding leaders and watching what they do and learning through their experience. And in a professional association, such as the SEIO or the ASA, you have the opportunity to serve in a variety of capacities and learn from outstanding leaders like the people that you heard earlier this morning. So our professional associations provide young people with the opportunity to learn and to grow as statistical leaders. If you've not thought about becoming a leader, you can become a leader simply by volunteering to meet a need. And that's where all of the people that I mentioned earlier, these people whose quotations I gave you, they all told me the same thing. They got started as leaders simply by volunteering to serve in a particular local situation where somebody said, we need somebody to step up and take responsibility for a particular task or activity. And these leaders have all told me that they grew by developing their communication skills, and ultimately they succeeded by adopting the view that as leaders, they're there to serve others. And again, you have some wonderful examples of precisely that type of leadership in your society. Well, I have given you the anticipation for the journey. We've talked about some trends. We have talked about some ways in which we can prepare ourselves and our students for the journey. And I'd like to finish by talking about the destination for our journey and what our profession might look like if we develop these kinds of skills in the future. On the left-hand side of this table, I have listed some traditional areas of statistical practice. On the right-hand side, I've indicated some of the opportunities, new career opportunities in emerging areas of practice where there's a huge amount of data and a huge demand for people who are well-trained and skilled in analyzing that data. Traditionally, we have identified ourselves as statistical professionals, but in these newer areas, there's not yet a sense of statistics as a profession. Instead, we're valued for our skills and our understanding of the organization. We have traditionally worked in consultative roles in business and in industry and also in government. People have come to us with problems and they've asked for our help in interpreting and analyzing the data. But increasingly, there's an opportunity to work and flourish in the world of big data by identifying and defining the problems themselves and formulating the problems and involving others in the problem solution. And that's where we can flourish as leaders. And there are many, many new opportunities in that sense. Traditionally, we have excelled at supporting decision-making, but we also in the future will have the opportunity to advance strategic goals by exploiting new sources of data and helping others understand where that data can be of value in advancing the goals of their organization. We have learned in the past to present our work to our peers at conferences, and we have focused on presenting mainly to technical audiences. But now we have the challenge of communicating the relevance, the significance of our work to peers and customers and also management and administrators, a much broader set of audiences. Now, we have new ways to contribute. As you heard me say earlier, we have traditionally worked with data in conventional relational databases. Increasingly, the data that come to us will be held in a different form. It will be distributed. We have often had to prepare the data for analysis, and very often that's a very big part of the task in front of us. But in the future, we will, I think, be working more with integrating large volumes of both structured and unstructured data. One of the hallmarks of our profession is that we have excelled at designing studies and surveys and experiments to provide people, decision makers, with the right type of data. And that is really something that sets our profession apart. We have also worked with observational data. In the future, I think we will need to work with many kinds of data, and we will have to be able to use the tools of a specialist, the tools that we're trained in our graduate programs, but we will need to think strategically about how to use that data and where it can provide impact and value for the organization. We have always excelled at applying specialized methods for statistical modeling and inference, and we have excelled at developing new methods. And I think in the future we will continue to do that. But I think we will also be challenged by opportunities where we can work with people in other areas, data mining, for instance, or forecasting, or optimization, or text analytics, and combine ideas and strengths from these areas. I want to leave you with 3 key points. The first of these is that these areas of emerging practice, business analytics and big data, present us with a paradox. I call this the paradox of 2013. And the paradox is simply this: there has never been a higher demand for statistical tools, but at the same time our field suffers from low visibility. People really do not understand what we do and how we contribute value, and that's the challenge that faces us. The future success of our field, I believe, depends on how we serve the needs of these emerging areas of practice. And that has been something that our field has been good at doing. We have adapted to needs over the years. If you think about the way in which our field has contributed, for instance, to agriculture in years gone by, or to advancing the field of medicine, we have always served the needs of emerging areas of practice. And our future depends on how well we equip our students to solve problems with these new data sources. And third, we will really need to develop the ability to communicate the importance, the relevance of our contributions, and ultimately to lead and influence others within our organizations. If you're a young person here, a student, or if you work with young people and are interested in preparing them for success, and I think all of us are, here are some personal applications that I would like to finish with. We've talked about the journey, and it's a challenging journey, which means that you must prepare. It's a professional journey. It's not a journey that we can undertake on our own, and so we should participate in our professional societies. And it will be a rewarding journey, which means that we must persist. Gracias por su atención. Les deseo un viaje muy exitoso.